Our lecture today is about the radars. The radars are the kind of wind that could split the strong nuclear force from the splitting combined forces, the super forces. In the previous lecture, we discussed the matching of the pairs of matter, or matching of the strings of matter to form the pairs of matter of each kind. Each time two strings match with each other or have resonance in their vibrating to give the particle its dignity, each time a matching happens, more wind released during it, until all the matter became pairs. That wind became very strong and stormy and intensified. At this stage, at the end of this stage, the stage of matching of the matter, we had all the pairs of matter existed. We have the strong, the intensified stormy wind at its maximum, and we still have the forces, the super force, still combined, the strong nuclear force not split from them. When the wind intensified and became stormy, it could split the strong nuclear force to act on the primordial water. In the Quran, we have verse number 3 in chapter 100 Al-Adeyat, which says, "Then by those that raid at morning." Those that raid, they are that intensified wind that could split the strong nuclear force. They raided over the primordial water. Raided means hit the water alternately. It's something like hitting a fabric with a stick to raise the smoke or the dust from it. Same as having a sack of milk, hitting it left to right, like clapping, to separate the water from the milk. That was the duty of the raiders at this stage on the primordial water. The verse says at morning. The morning means the early universe, the beginning of this universe. It doesn't mean the morning of our day. Verse number 4 says they raised by soaking them. So the raiders, the raiders acted on the primordial water. The primordial water is consisted of, or composed of, the residue from the annihilation of matter and antimatter. And the residue at this period was the strings that could match with each other to form the pairs of matter, and the dark energy, which split from the strings during the perfection of the strings, or the matter, or the primary things. So when the raiders acted on the primordial water, the first thing happened, the smoke or the source of that wind started to raise up above the primordial water. Imam Ali described these two verses by saying in his sermon 1, "And then he stormed a stream and sent its source extremely far." So stormed its stream, that means he intensified the wind when forming the pairs of matter, and when became it at its maximum, it could split the strong nuclear force and started to raid over the matter. And send this, the first thing, sending its source extremely far. As we said, the source of this wind was the dark matter. So the dark matter, by this wind, combined with the strong nuclear force, could raise or send the smoke or its source far away from the primordial water. Imam Ali named it as a smoke and named it as the source of the wind, as well as Imam Ali al-Rida. Then when the smoke was raised surrounding the primordial water, we had that intensified wind raiding, or the raiders were raiding over the primordial water strongly, and by that they could glue the matter in them. The matter at this period was mass particles or pairs of matter or pairs of particles which belong to different sources. Like some of them belong to the matter, some of them belong to the electromagnetic force, some of them belong to the weak nuclear force, and some belong to the living things sources. By gluing them all together, mixed, not separated from each other, formed an entity known in science as the symmetry. Now here we have the symmetry. This is the gluing energy. The strong nuclear force glued all these pairs of matter together. The gluons, the WZ bosons, the photons, the electrons, the protons, and human, angels, and cattle. When the symmetry was formed, it was characterized by many features, or it has some properties. The first of these properties, there was a layer of energy separated the strong nuclear force, or separated the symmetry from its surrounding. That layer of energy named in the Quran as the qatmir. Here we have the qatmir. This white layer here is the qatmir, a layer of energy separated between the symmetries and its surrounding, and their surrounding. The second property, we have they glued in the matter, the pairs of matter. The pair of matter consisted of two strings, two opposite strings matched together, have their resonance of vibration, had resonance in their vibration, and made the dignity of that particle. So each of the pairs of the two strings matched together, each of them is a string. This string named in the Quran as the fatil. Here we have each of them, H, W, Z, each of them is made of pair of primary things named in the Quran as fatil. The third property in the symmetry is that each of those pairs, when glued in by the radars including the strong nuclear force, when glued in them or soaked by them, they made a din. They resided in a din. This din is named in the Quran as the naqir. Here's the din that each of the pairs resided. This one, the gluons resided in, the W resided in this naqir. So all of them each had a naqir to reside in the symmetry. when all the matter of or all the symmetries were formed completely, and all the strong nuclear force was used. What remains is the wind, the intensified wind. The intensified wind was still strong to act upon the primordial water. Now verse number 5, they intermediated it entirely. Intermediated entirely. When all the nuclear force was used, the remainder of the splitting combined forces, the super force, was the weak force. The weak force is composed of two forces, which is the weak nuclear force and the electromagnetic force. We have in this diagram here, here's the dark matter, the smoke surrounded the primordial water. We have here the symmetries, and we have here the black. Here is the weak force surrounding the symmetries. So by having the strong nuclear force gluing the pairs of matter, pairs of particle, pairs of primary things inside the symmetry, we had the weak force surrounding the symmetries. As we discussed earlier, that each of them belong to a different source. We have the gluons, belongs to the strong nuclear force or the radars. We have the electrons, belongs to the weak nuclear force. We have the WZ and the bosons belong to the weak nuclear force. The photons belongs to the electromagnetic force. We have the human angels and the cattle belongs to their origin forces. Each of them tried to bond with the weak force, with its origin. Each of these particles tried, or pairs of primary things, tried to combine with its source, which either the electromagnetic force or the weak nuclear force or the living thing origin. But they couldn't, for two reasons. One, because they were glued strongly inside the symmetry. The second thing, the weak force was combined or consisted of more than one force, which is the photons, which is the electromagnetic force, and the weak nuclear force. Because of that, they couldn't bond with each other completely, but by surrounding the weak force around the symmetry, made them close to each other and could have partial connection. By that, the duty of the radars ended, and because the strong nuclear force was used completely by the symmetries, and the weak force was tied to the pairs of primary things inside the symmetries, the intensified stormy wind was still active and could act upon the primordial water. But it started a new stage of creation, which is the stage of the conveyed consecutively. By that, the intensified wind was divided into many, split into too many winds, each could free one of the glued particles in the symmetry. That's our topic in our next lecture, and thank you for your listening.